So how do you dial in your influences and use them in a way where you're not just trying to copy them? Hey everyone, I'm Jack Fossett, and welcome to this video where we are going to talk about how to use your influences in a way where you're honoring where your musical roots are from, but not in a way where you're just trying to be someone else. Chasing Hendrix. I'm not really chasing Jimi Hendrix. I hope you get where the gist of the title comes from. This is a new series that I want to work on about, as I said, dialing in your influences in a way where you're not just trying to copy them. And I thought, what better place to start than one of the most influential guitarists of all time, probably many people's favorite guitarist, and even though this is a ridiculous even concept, but many people's pick for the best guitar player of all time. Now, it is ridiculous to try and suggest that one guitar player is best of all time or better than another, but with Jimi Hendrix, of course, the big thing is that he just opened the door to a whole world of electric guitar playing and really expanded the acceptable use of the instrument, showed what kind of limits it could be pushed to in a way that no other guitarist did. So I think, again, greatest of all time is a ridiculous prospect, but if you look at some of the important guitar players through history and where it went, he's definitely one of the most important and also just an amazing player. Now, this might surprise many of you, but Hendrix is a huge influence for me, even though my style's really nothing like him. You know, my music isn't like his, my playing style isn't particularly like his, but like pretty much everyone else, I had to kind of grow through the Jimi Hendrix portal, so to speak, you know, in guitar playing. And particularly when I was getting into some lead playing, and I was just absolutely enamored with him and the incredible way that he was creative and abstract. And one of the things I always like to say about Jimi Hendrix is sometimes I feel like it's like you're trying to dial in a radio and you're getting a lot of this kind of static, but you're sort of like also every so often you're kind of like picking up this incredibly melodic signal from Jupiter or something like that, right? It's otherworldly, but it's beautiful, and it's kind of mixed in with these crazy noises and in just a way that's very, very difficult to copy. You can certainly play his licks and things, and you can copy his gear, which is something we're going to talk about coming up here, but you're never going to be Jimi Hendrix, and I'm never going to be Jimi Hendrix, and that's a good thing. You know, there is only one Jimi Hendrix, and we should respect that, and again, we should try and take his influence and then put it into our own playing in a way where we're not just trying to be someone else. Part of the reason I want to do this video is because I see too many great guitar players just trying to be someone else. Like, how many, I'm going to get in trouble for this, how many great blues players have you all seen whose talent is, I don't want to say wasted, but whose talent is misdirected in just trying to be Stevie Ray Vaughan. My point is that if you have music to share, don't just share someone else's. Tribute groups and things like that aside, right? If you're in a tribute group or if you're in a specific kind of cover band, that's a different story. But for people kind of doing your own music and stuff, kind of be bold enough to do your own thing, but then figure out how to use this and to meld this. So Hendrix is a good place to start for me, again, because I don't sound like him, because I don't play like him, but because he was a big part of my musical development. And listening to him and watching him play in videos and things was just really, really inspiring to me, particularly when I was a new guitar player. So today I'm going to use 3 different rigs that are all very inspired by Jimi Hendrix. And I'm going to try and kind of inject a little bit of his playing style into my playing style, use some of his techniques, but then also apply it to my own music. So I'm going to give you a couple of samples of gear and tone and how you can do it just like you just heard, and then we're going to try and apply it in a musical setting. So the first rig that we have here is a Fender Stratocaster. This is actually, I don't have a favorite guitar, but I'll say there's no guitar I like more than this. This is an American standard Fender Stratocaster. It was a gift from my wife. It has been decked out a little bit, and one of the things it's been decked out with is a set of Lust for Tone Monterey's, which is a Jimi Hendrix-inspired Stratocaster pickup set. I'm going into a vintage style Marshall. It's not the Marshall that Hendrix would have used, but it is a vintage style Marshall. This is a JTM 45 Blues Breaker. And I am using a directly Hendrix-inspired pedal. This is the Keeley Monterey. Now, what you just heard was clean, and then using the fuzz of the Monterey, and then using its Univibe, which is not a photocell Univibe, but it's a really great sounding, Univibe effect. And it really, really gets the vibe. Really gets the point across. Anyway, a lot of people have done really great in-depth videos on how to get a specific Hendrix tone, really get it very, very close, right down to like RJ did a great video about, even like the string gauge that you use making a difference. I'm not going to deep dive that much. I'm just going to apply some of his basic ideas of playing. So some of the ideas of playing that I'm going to use here, well, first of all, in these first couple of rigs, I've got a Stratocaster. That's an obvious starting point. I'm going to favor the neck pickup, but also use the bridge pickup a little bit. If you're using a Stratocaster and trying to get a Jimi Hendrix tone, that neck pickup is responsible for a lot of those sweet Hendrixian tones. And I'm going into the amplifier, and I'm going to use the fuzz, but I'm also going to use my volume knob, as you heard. That was one of Hendrix's staples. That was one of the big things he did. I like to think of it almost like he's a B3 player, right? Using the drawbars and, kind of changing the speed of the Leslie and the way that organ players really have basically kind of like one sound that they go very dynamic with, so it can sound really sultry and soulful, or it can sound really powerful and driving and in your face. And he kind of did a similar thing with the guitar, where just back off the volume until it's really clean and sweet, and then roll it up and it's this full-on amazing sound. So you heard that a little bit before. And that was about as Hendrixy as I get right there. That's about as close to a Jimi Hendrix style playing and sound as I can personally get. Now, the other thing playing style, and I think this is important to remember, and here's a quick sample of this, is that he had this really incredible percussive rhythmic thing that he did that I think was very, very influential and kind of revolutionary, which is like this. Percussive is, I guess, the best way that I can describe that, but that's something to kind of inject into the playing as well. So now I'm going to take that rig, that sound, and play it over one of my own songs and see if I can make this sound and kind of a little bit of this style of play fit something that I have created from a songwriting standpoint. So let's have a listen. This song is called Worse for Wear. Now, I'd like to think that that works, but from a practical standpoint, even though I love the tone and even though I love the influence, that actually, for my own taste, is trying a little too much to be like Jimmy. Maybe keep part of it, but not all of it. So now I'm going to change rigs a little bit, and I'm going to use some of the same ideas and techniques, but I'm going to change to another Hendrixian-inspired rig, but one that would be a little bit more off the beaten path. So I'm still using a Stratocaster. This is another American standard, another decked out American standard, but this one has a rosewood fingerboard, which he would have used in his earlier years. There are even some great videos of him playing rosewood fingerboard Stratocasters with the small headstock. You know, of course, obviously Monterey comes to mind, but there are other live videos you can see of him playing these old 60s style Stratocasters. Now this guitar is loaded with a set of single tone pickups, and this is a 60s inspired set, and when single tone pickups and I were talking about, like I said, I really want a 60s kind of set. He said, well, do you want like a Stevie Ray style set or do you want like a Jimi Hendrix style set? And I went, why would you ask me such a difficult question? Went with the Hendrixian inspired set because I think that style of playing, I don't have that brute force style of playing like Stevie Ray Vaughan had. I don't dig into the guitar like he did. Hendrix had a lot of finesse. For as incredibly powerful as he could be, he also had this really gentle kind of touch. And Stevie, even when Stevie played dynamically, he still somehow was like, his intensity was like always on 11, even if he was playing something really pretty and sweet. That was just Stevie's way. It was like it was all in all the time. Hendrix had this kind of more like he could roll into it a little bit differently. And so this was the set that I wanted to go with. It's a great sounding set, and I think it really kind of nails that earlier Hendrixian 60s sound. Now I'm playing into the Fender Bassman for this. The legend is that Voodoo Child was recorded on a cranked Fender Bassman. I've never heard any confirmation on that, but I've heard this legend before, and that, you know, Hendrix possibly used Fender Bassmans on a number of different recordings. Who knows if that's true or not? You know, nobody back then expected that there would be a legion of guitar players with baby televisions in their pockets debating what gear people used on a recording. Anyway, I'm not going to crank it. I know other YouTube guitar players would crank it for a video. I live in the real world. I'm not going to crank it. I am going to use some overdrive pedals. I'm going to use a combination of a way huge Red Llama, and I'm just using that with no gains, just boosting my signal a little bit. And then also using a Keeley Super Fat mod, which is a very transparent overdrive, really gets a nice kind of amp-like tone. And I'm going to do the same playing kind of technique of, you know, rolling the volume back, playing a little bit more percussively than I normally would. So first, let's hear a sample of what this rig in general sounds like. Now, interestingly for me, there were also shades of Stevie in this setup, again being overdrive pedal into a Fender style amp, but there were also shades of Eric Clapton, what I was kind of picking up on that. And tonally, and you know, my playing style probably crosses over with Clapton a lot more than some of the others. So that's kind of a cool way where you can start to see these influences sort of melding together if you just change up your rig a little bit. So now I want to apply the same thing to another song. This is a song that's not out yet. This is a song I'm working on called Nor'easter, kind of a bluesy rock sort of thing that is Hendrix inspired. So this song is more Hendrix inspired, but the rig is a little bit more off the beaten path. So let's hear how this sounds now in a song setting. Now, for the last rig, we're going to go way off the beaten path. And this is still a Hendrix-inspired rig, but it's going to be very different and dialed in a way that I would play it as opposed to trying to get like his sound. This is one of my crown jewel guitars, but this is a Gibson SG Custom. This is also loaded with less tone pickups. This has what's called 57 Beauties in it, which are a PAF style pickup. I'm plugging this into a Marshall JVM set on classic mode, and I am actually using, again, some Hendrix-inspired, directly Hendrix-inspired pedals. I'm going to be, well, one Hendrix-inspired pedal. I'm using the Jim Dunlop Band of Gypsies mini Fuzz Face. And then to kind of give the similar vibe, but a little bit different, I'm going to use a harmonic tremolo, which kind of gets the same idea as a univibe, you know, like tone snobs will tell you, no, it's not the same thing, but from an audience standpoint, they will just hear something that sounds like it and it'll sound good, and that's all they'll care about. So this is a Mr. Black mini tremolo, which has a cool harmonic blend knob on it. So I'm using that in conjunction with the fuzz. And for this one, I'm just going to dive right into a song. Again, there's almost more of a Clapton with Cream vibe until you kick in the harmonic tremolo, because it's a fat SG going into a Marshall sound. And that, even with the fuzz face, now a good fuzz face, in my not so humble opinion, actually can sound very similar to an amp breaking up, believe it or not. Fuzz and amps totally rip-roaring wide open have surprisingly a lot in common, more so than an overdrive. There's more, when you get a tube amp really wide open, there's more of a chaoticness to it than the smoothness of what a lot of overdrive pedals do. So the fuzz, actually, I was getting more of a cream sound, I thought, out of this. Like, this is a tone I would more use to try and cover a cream tune than a Hendrix sound, but using a full-on Hendrix rig, even though it was a certainly a lesser popular Hendrix to use the Gibson SG, but he certainly still used it. But let's hear how this sounds. I think you'll hear that there are, again, kind of shades of both fitting into it. Now that is another original song that is coming out soon that is called Walk This Road Alone. And that rig is something that's more likely for me to use. I love Stratocasters, but when it comes to like a driving blues rock sound, I've always kind of leaned more Gibson because that's where my influences were from the bluesy standpoint. But the basic idea is, using an artist inspired rig and applying it in different ways to your own music. Now, for those of you that haven't picked up on this, I think one of the most important things to say is also the music you play makes the biggest difference. Because a lot of my songs are stuff that Hendrix would never play. It's just not at all his style. It's still rock and it got a blues influence and all that. It's just very, very different than anything he would do. And a song is not just a blank canvas for where we go to shred. A song really dictates where music can go and what you're going to be playing and how what you're going to be playing kind of affects your guitar, not just your guitar phrasing and melody, but also what tone suits it. Imagine David Gilmour playing Pride of Joy. Did your mind just explode a little bit? That's kind of my point. Is it's like, you have to adjust your gear and your style a little bit, or you need to just take it and make it something totally different. So please let us know in the comments, specifically Hendrix, but also we can talk about other influences too. What are ways that you have taken your influences and tried to take little bits and kind of inject it into your playing? Now, the other thing that we didn't talk about in this, and this is something that's obviously important, and Keith Richards, I think, kind of said it best, where he said, everything you've ever heard comes out in what you play. That might be a little bit broad speaking, but the idea is that all of your influences ultimately come together. There may be one influence that kind of shows up more than others, but the best way to do it is to take little bits from everybody, figure out what suits you the best from each of them, and then there's also going to be something that comes just from you that nobody else has. But that is how you get your own sound and how you also kind of honor your influences in the midst of that. So please let us know what you think. Who are your influences? How do you take little bits of them to dial into your own music? I'm Jack Fossett. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.